Hey everybody, TacticAngel here, back on the world of Warships Legends and the PlayStation 4. Today we'll be taking a look at the Tier 4 premium Italian battleship, Giulio Cesare. Like all my reviews, I'll start with some history, then we'll talk about the ship in the game, your commander choices, and the stats before finishing off with some gameplay. If you want to skip around at all, you should see some time codes down in the description to help you out. The Giulio Cesare was the second Conte di Cavour class battleship built by the Italian Regia Marina. The ship was named after Julius Caesar, as we would call him, the Roman senator, patrician, consul general, and dictator for life in the late stages of Republican Rome. And obviously, dictator for life was subject to surprise revocation by group assassination. The Giulio Cesare was laid down in June 1910. She was launched in October 1911, and she was commissioned into service in June 1914. This means that the Giulio Cesare saw service during World War I, but she actually didn't do all that much during the war, other than sit in port as a fleet in being, mostly because the Austro-Hungarians refused to take their ships out of port, and the Italians didn't really want to sail their boats around the mine-ridden Adriatic Sea unless they absolutely had to. But what is noteworthy is that her configuration was very different than what we see in the game. In fact, she sported an additional turret mounted at the middle of the ship, which actually means she had 13 main battery guns. At the time, this was a pretty impressive number of guns, considering the only ship that had a larger main battery was the Rio de Janeiro, a battleship built for Brazil that had 14. Though it should be said that the 12-inch guns that were on her at the time were smaller than most of her European contemporaries. The Giulio Cesare participated in the Italian military action against Corfu, which was essentially shore bombardment of the island in support of a landing party. About a decade after World War I, she was decommissioned in May of 1928. Then, in 1933, she went in for a refit and total rebuild that would last 4 years until 1937. During this time, her central turret was removed, her power plant was replaced, her 12-inch guns were bored out to 12.6 inches, which is the 320 millimeters that we see in game, and her entire AA and secondary suite was also swapped out for more modern weaponry. Her armor was improved, and this included the installation of the Pugliese torpedo defense system, like I talked about in the Roma review. Naturally, all of these changes required the entire superstructure to be rebuilt as well. In addition to adding to the punch of her shells, the refit also improved her maneuverability, increasing her speed from a slightly above average at the time, 22 knots during World War I, to a pretty impressive 27. With this work completed, she rejoined active duty in the Regia Marina in 1937. Giulio Cesare's participation in World War II was fairly limited, again due to the constant fuel constraints on the Italian Navy. It did, however, take part in the Battle of Calabria in July of 1940. During the battle, the Giulio Cesare did score several near misses against the Warspite and her escorts, but she received in turn a direct hit from HMS Warspite at a range of about 26,000 yards, which is about 14 3/4 miles, or I am told nearly 24 kilometers. This is one of the longest hits ever scored in a ship-to-ship engagement, though the shell struck one of Giulio Cesare's funnels, causing it to collapse and resulting in a fire, which also baked off some of the Cesare's anti-aircraft ammunition. It did cause a considerable difficulty for the ship as smoke filled one of the engine compartments, which caused its evacuation and greatly reduced the ship's speed while she burned. Unsure of how serious the damage was to Giulio Cesare, Admiral Campioni had the Italian ships lay smoke and began moving away from the engagement, though the Italian position was that the destroyers were covering a torpedo run. Whatever the case, the Giulio Cesare and her sister ship, the Conte di Cavour, had no more significant contributions to the battle, which historians agree more or less ended in a stalemate. The Giulio Cesare was repaired. She was attacked while at anchor at Taranto later that year in November 1940 and was present at the Battle of Cape Spartivento, but never got close enough to actually engage. She at least got to fire her guns in the First Battle of Sirte, with a few minor engagements assisting in convoys and providing covering fire. That pretty much rounded out her service for the Italian Navy in World War II. Following the Italian surrender in 1943, she sailed for Malta and like other Italian ships that were to be interned there, she was attacked along the way by German air raids. After the war, the Giulio Cesare was given to the Russians as a war prize in 1949, and renamed to the Novorossiysk. No idea how to say that. She would serve as part of the Russian Black Sea Fleet until 1955, when she sunk due to a catastrophic explosion while docked at Sevastopol. The cause of the explosion is somewhat disputed, with the official report owing it to the explosion of an undetonated German mine, or possibly several of them, which the Russians had not removed. Though other theories include that she was deliberately sabotaged by the Italians, either as vengeance for war reparations or as part of a NATO operation against the then belligerent Soviet Union. In any case, the explosion caused the ship to sink rapidly, and she was broken up for scrap in 1957. As far as the Giulio Cesare in World Warships Legends, she's going to feel really nice for all the folks out there who value fast battleships, and she comes in at Tier 4 where, other than the Congo, that really isn't a thing, though admittedly she's only a half a knot faster than the Piotr Veliki. In any case, where you can basically hear ships like the Congo or Piotr Veliki suck wind when they try to turn, the Giulio Cesare actually has very respectable turning characteristics. Another neat trick that pretty much only she can do at this tier is keep her turrets on target while maneuvering. Admittedly, the size of her main battery isn't especially impressive, either in caliber or the number of guns that you have, but she does do more damage than you'd expect with both HE and AP in spite of that. Just so I don't give anyone the wrong impression, that isn't an endorsement to run this as an HE battleship, but you should know that, at least in situations where HE is your best option, that it's actually not too terribly bad for this boat. She's also reasonably well protected, though if you're playing a ship with a large caliber main battery, the Giulio Cesare can go from 1935 Mussolini to 1945 Mussolini in about one salvo, if you aim just below the forward turrets, at pretty much any angle. And for that reason, I'd actually probably say this isn't an exceptional brawler, unless you really can control what kind of brawls you're getting into, and it definitely does help in that case to be top tier. For the most part, I'd say that the Giulio Cesare is really fun to play at medium range. She's tough as nails in a kiting situation, and if called upon to play in close, she can be a very capable and dangerous ship, even if she isn't incredibly survivable at those distances. When we go into commanders, I guess I should be happy that there's only one Italian battleship commander, because it makes the commander selection for my review fairly easy to write, though I guess it also kind of makes it pointless to listen to. In any case, Paolo di Rivel is the guy you'll likely find does the most for you in the Giulio, simply because his abilities actually line up with the battleship. Unlike the Roma, Brawler probably isn't the greatest of choices for this ship, and don't be tricked into the idea of sacrificing your improved heal for a little bit of extra range. That isn't really a great idea. In short, I'd probably build for endurance, and hope for the best from RNG where your accuracy is concerned. Di Rivel is also probably the commander you want simply because his base trait is not only useful for this ship, but pretty much a useful inspiration for almost any battleship in the game. If you want to, or have to use Campioni, you're going to probably end up wanting to take some pretty suboptimal skills, and those are things that help your fire chance, stealth, and speed. Now, to be fair, all of these are pretty great for Giulio Cesare, considering they play into the strength that the ship already has, and at least with Campioni, taking additional range doesn't come at the expense of a really useful skill. So you can do that without feeling like you've made a mistake. Or did you want rudder shift? Well, don't let that keep you awake at night, because the choices you make here are pretty trivial either way. As we jump into stats, since we don't have an Italian battleship line, I'll be talking about where the Giulio Cesare falls compared to the other Tier 4 battleships in the game right now. In terms of survivability, Giulio Cesare isn't really exceptional in this case. The 45,500 hit points is fairly average, and when you look at the armor values here, 6 to 280mm, that's actually kind of on the low side. That said, the 30% torpedo reduction is actually very good, best in tier, except for the Texas, with 31. For the main battery, you will have 2x2 and 2x3 320mm guns, which is 12.6 inches. This does mean that you have the second smallest guns of any battleship presently in the game at this tier, so it probably isn't that surprising that your range is about 300 meters below average. 30 seconds is a pretty respectable reload, but the real good stat that you can see here is the turret traverse. With just 36 seconds base, you beat the next closest turret rotation by 9 seconds, and your turret rotation is fully twice that of what you'll find on ships like the Iron Duke. The damage you'll be doing with the main battery guns is good either way you look at it. With HE, you're looking at 4,800 damage base, which is average, and a 35% fire chance. All things considered, this does make you about 15% more efficient as a fire starter than most other battleships, at tier 4. And though your shells are smaller than average, they actually do average AP damage, giving you a slight edge in terms of overall DPM. Giulio Cesare also sports an above average secondary array, though not by so much that I would recommend building into it, at least not with secondary accuracy as it is now. When we look at maneuverability, I think I'd say this is the best maneuvering tier 4 battleship in the game right now. She's the second fastest, with only the Congo beating her out, but unlike the Congo that does a circle in about 770 meters with a pretty slow rudder shift, your turning circle and rudder shift are pretty typical of a battleship at this tier. And with these three stats, and helped maybe a little bit by the way that people play at tier 4, I found that I was able to make a turn from facing at an angle to facing away at a decent angle between salvos of enemy ships, which is not common for a battleship to be able to do at any tier. And then when we get to concealment, you're also pretty good here, tied for second best detectability from both sea and air. That does mean that with Campioni, if you wanted to build for a stealthy battleship, you actually could get pretty close to 11-kilometer range. Thankfully, your small guns also offer you a below average detectability while firing from smoke by more than half a kilometer, should that condition ever come up. The Giulio Cesare comes with one consumable, and this is a heal, which is nothing special, and there are no choices here. This may be a drawback for you since that doesn't mean that there's a whole lot for you to do other than time your damage control and healing correctly. But to be fair, most tier 4 battleships don't come with a lot of additional consumables anyway, so competitively speaking, not really a disadvantage. Alright, so as we get into the actual gameplay, I will be on Estuary, and here you can see just checking out who's in the actual game with me. There's some Italian for you. I actually did take a little bit of Italian. I failed miserably at it. In any case, I will say as I'm starting this game up, I had a really strong crisis of what game I wanted to showcase on this because I had a lot of really good games in this ship because it's a really comfortable ship for somebody who's used to a fast and maneuverable battleship. And in some cases, I felt like some of the results were a little bit too good to actually show off. I might upload one or two of those. In any case, this is, even as I look at it in reviewing this, a surprise even to me. I remember making a very intentional decision. In any case, you can see we've got the commemorative flag up there on the mast. We will go ahead and put our commander up on the screen so you know what we're dealing with here. While we're doing that, obviously I'm following in some shells with the shell follow view, which is available on preset 1 and 2. Now we've got that out of the way. Thank you longtime subscribers for listening to that. I'd honestly say like 100 times, but it's getting pretty close. So out there we have the Iron Duke. We're doing our very, very best to aim in some shots there. Our choice of Cunningham is to try to give us as much accuracy as we can physically get, or at least to counteract the effect of camouflage that a lot of ships are going to be wearing. In any case, I find this ship actually strangely has better accuracy at long range sometimes. And it might just be the way that RNG is shaked out for me. But when people are very close to you, you really notice that the dispersion is really bad on this ship at times. And when they're far away, sometimes you get really nice groupings. So I think there's something wonky going on with like the accuracy curve that this thing enjoys. I think it might be, as they say, in interest rate environments, slightly inverted. But in any case, here you can see early in the game we are demonstrating what this ship can do in terms of shooting at long range. That's a little bit disappointing that the Iron Duke disappears, and of course as soon as he disappears then I target the other Giulio and then he disappears. Now we're just shooting shells at shadows and penumbras, I guess. Now we are spotted from the middle. I think that the people in the middle probably don't realize that they're the ones spotting me because they are running away. But seeing as I don't want to be shot to pieces here by Giulio in smoke, I'm going to kick it into gear. Obviously, Giulio Cesare, really, really nice maneuverability. We're moving around pretty good. Obviously, you can see at 3/4 speed, we're over 20 knots, which is honestly where a lot of battleships are going to fall that you're going to actually face in this sort of range. And then, of course, we're going to get a little bit faster than that even. And the whole time, we've pretty much got our turrets going exactly where we want them. Now, where that Royal Navy ship that just passed me might not want to get into some sort of knife fight with a destroyer, you can see I am already loaded up with HE, hoping actually to get a shot at this Jaguar. He is chasing around one of my teammates, which doesn't make me happy because I think that's a Japanese destroyer, so he should clearly lose, at least under any normal circumstances. Unfortunately, this Königsberg has interrupted me, and you can see I am turning out. We do that like really easily thanks to the excellent speed and also our pretty decent rudder shift and turning circle. So now we have AP loaded up again. Out of nowhere, we get a really nice cluster of shells. They slam through the front of that Königsberg, and he is going back to port. Now I'm going to re-engage to see if I can't help out with this Jaguar. Unfortunately, that fort on the edge of that island is not making my life very easy. I'm hoping that he comes around this corner so that I can contribute, or, you know, that I can peek around this corner to do that. Unfortunately, we do have AP loaded. We just hit him with one shell. Probably wouldn't have really made a huge difference there one way or the other. Now it looks like he has other things to worry about, and that is a set of fish that was launched in his direction. I do have another opportunity to engage a destroyer. In this case, we do have the HE loaded, and you know, the HE will do kind of what you expect if you actually do hit a destroyer with it. You are maneuverable enough that engaging a destroyer isn't all that bad, and particularly in an offensive capability, I could probably tell you within a few hundred hit points the amount of damage that it will take to saturate your bow in this. I think it's right around 16,500, because if you take multiple torpedoes off of the nose, like I have several times, it actually works out not to be all that terrible for you because there's just nothing else to damage. Now I am moving in to try to help again with that destroyer. And you can see while I'm doing this, the quick way that my turrets traverse. Obviously I have a little extra something going into my turrets, both in the form of Kedrov and my skill selection. So we actually do swing our turrets around really, really nicely in this particular ship. Again, not a thing that's very common for you to be able to do. You're lucky even to be able to keep up with your turret traverse at medium range with most of the battleships at this tier. So, though we're not going to charge down this man, we do feel pretty confident that we can maneuver in his area. Now, I'm fairly certain he should have launched torpedoes at me. We give it a second, and now we're going to turn all the way out to hopefully avoid whatever those are. We are pointing the stern of our ship directly back towards his corpse when we see that a New York is now firing at us. Not great, because we're not clearly a better ship than the New York. A little bit, I would say. At least in terms of how I like to play a battleship. This is a battleship that you can be pretty aggressive with, but you do need to be careful about getting right into the mix of things. There we end up with a pretty decent cluster of shots. And a moment later, you kind of see one of the weaknesses of the Giulio Cesare. I will draw your attention back to the front side of this armor scheme. It is not particularly well armored beneath the front turrets. It's a lot better to be in a kiting situation with this because you can bounce a few more of those shots. In spite of not having a ton invested in accuracy or even having the option to do so, we are tearing up that New York pretty well. This sort of angle is not so much because I expect to bounce anything from that Iron Duke, more that I just want to be fairly narrow, and I also want to be able to see when my rear turrets are in play. Pretty quick they are. We do launch another nice set of shells out there at the New York and finish that off. Now we got this Iron Duke. Iron Duke, kind of the opposite of this ship in a lot of ways. And as I'm getting pretty close, you can kind of see, like, maybe it's just that the dispersion is more noticeably terrible at this range, but I feel like it's so consistently poor at ranges inside of 7 kilometers that there's something mechanical that I'm not completely aware of. There we do get a nice set of shells. Unfortunately, don't walk away with a whole lot. We're testing out different areas with these 320s. Unfortunately, I didn't quite get both of my guns off there, so we kind of screwed that up. But again, we just keep firing away. You can see on the other side of the map, our folks are going to actually cap this out. It doesn't look like anybody can do anything about that at this point, but we have managed to keep the enemy out of our base. We actually defended against 2 battleships, and I feel like if the game had gone on there, I had a pretty good chance of actually finishing him off there as well. Giulio Cesare, final thoughts. I really like this ship. It's going to be staying in my favorites section, so every week when I have to do a tier 4 premium ship, Giulio Cesare is probably going to be pretty high on my list of ships I'd like to play. Is it a seal clubber? I wouldn't go so far as to say that. It is a very capable ship, and particularly if you're used to higher tier battleships that have more of that maneuverability, it's going to feel very comfortable for those sorts of players. So maybe it will attract a few more people who are exceptionally high skilled into tier 4, which may or may not be really great for the game. But I enjoy this ship. I would say probably would recommend it. It is not the most powerful tier 4 battleship. I think that still belongs to the Imperator Nikolai, at least offensively speaking. But the ship does offer you a lot of fun possibilities for play. In any case, those are my thoughts on Giulio Cesare. Thank you everybody for watching this video, and I hope to see you on the next one.